I don't know if there's any staggering or not.
Ah, all right. It says, Hallelujah. Oh my goodness. All right. It actually says we're live. Whether or not that's true, private. See.
You refresh.
All right, folks in the chat, thank you for your patience. Can you tell me
Yeah,
if we are actually live or
fiber
not?
optic.
Sounds like it to me.
I don't know if there's
Yep.
any staggering
Ah,
or not.
all right. It says, all right. It says, Hallelujah. Okay. Oh my goodness. All right.
Wow.
Actually, says we're live. Well, that was an unexpected amount of effort to, geez, I don't know, just stream on YouTube. All right, folks in the chat, thank you for your patience. Gotta shake it off, you know. All right, so far I have with me Mr. Adam Grubbs and Mr. Ken. I don't know his last name, but he doesn't need to tell me anyway. So, thank you, gentlemen, for joining me. Thank you, everyone in chat, for joining me as well. I am having the. Well, thank you. I would be talking to myself otherwise. Appreciate you stopping by. And so, how are you doing tonight, Adam?
I'm all right, man. Just playing around with some automation tools.
Oh yes, yes. You've been doing some some interesting things at work. You were telling me about automating some deployments and things like that.
Yeah, using Terraform and Ansible mostly. It's a pretty neat tool. I don't know. You just kind of build out these config files, and you install providers that kind of plug into platforms. Playing around with some automation like Docker tools, or libvirt or Proxmox.
Oh
or
yes, yeah.
any various cloud vendor, those kind of things. And
Nice.
once you kind of learn the syntax and learn the different options in the providers, it makes for building out infrastructure, like spinning up VMs, or even creating Docker containers or Kubernetes or any of this stuff really easily. It automates it so you can just kind of run one command and be done with it. And it also puts it in such a way that you have the file of what you've done. So if anything goes wrong, you have the file to look exactly what was done. So,
and I suppose
really
then
useful in our environment.
And then you can also then, I suppose, reproduce that same result over and over and come back to it. So if you deployed 10 servers today and next week you needed to do 10 more, you know they're going to be the same exact configuration.
Correct. Exactly.
That is very cool.
It's very
Mr. Ken,
useful.
how are you today?
Oh, fair to middling. Yourself?
Fair to middling. That's a good way to put it. You kind of hard to go wrong that way. I'm doing all right. These are my days away from home. I'm staying in a hotel for some treatment I'm getting.
Mhm.
So this is my way to spend the evening with you fine folks and just talk about some Linux and stuff. So what do you got going on? Anything going on today, Ken? Or just thought you'd come hang out?
I just that. Let's see. Today I put in the 19.2 update for MX. Change that over. I had a beautiful install of Manjaro. It got it up and running, all updated and everything else. Restarted, and the drive failed.
Well, you can't blame Manjaro for that, I guess.
No, but all that work, I spent about an hour and a half, 2 hours playing with it, and I got it just nice, that desktop. I'll even trying Plasma, and
Oh, Plasma? Yeah, nice.
And I was learning the configuration, like, hey, I'm watching all the little videos, the how-tos, and the tweaks and whatnot, and then this happens to me, and it's just like, you can't win for losing.
Was it an older drive or?
Yeah, actually, I cannibalized it out of my son's desktop that had died an ugly death. But I still got 2 terabytes sitting here, so I can play with those. And
there you go.
Here we go.
Mr. Steve, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing good, gentlemen. How are you?
Why complain, Steve? Why complain?
Exactly. Right before I left today, my boss stops in, so why complain? Why complain?
Exactly. Ah, and our fifth member has arrived.
Yeah,
I
Which
got
one's
one.
that one, Adam?
that's McGee.
McGee. That's McGee.
He's very photogenic. You know, if you put him on your game streams, I guarantee you get tons of people checking it
Oh
out.
yeah, no doubt, no doubt.
McGee plays. I like it.
I'm looking for the picture. I've seen it and I used to have it and it was on my Windows, and when I reformatted, I forgot to save that picture, but it was the like a hyper tunnel with the galaxy behind and the cat going "Ah!"
Everyone loves cats. It's just what we do.
Yeah, I got 4 of them here and a dog, so I'm good.
Oh my! So I had a couple things to just sort of chat through. Did a little bit of prep work. Nothing major, you know. Just thought, what are some interesting things that I was thinking about? So you mentioned Ken Manjaro, and that was one of the things that came up this week. They actually are taking the next step, according to them, and they're incorporating and creating a company around Manjaro itself in order to be able to employ people and run it like a business. And the other major thing was how they are handling their money. So that's actually going to go into a foundation that manages money for companies like this. And so they are going to, moving forward, I guess, act more like a business. Now, according to them, they are not going to change anything. So if you were to read the forum post that announced this, they claim that nothing's going to change. It says, most importantly, Manjaro itself is not changing. The project will continue to run in its current form. And then it just goes on to detail the 2 changes I mentioned about creating a company and having it go to a nonprofit fiscal host, which is what that entity is called. And it's going to allow them to have developers commit full time to Manjaro and its related projects, interact with other developers, with other distributions, protect the independence of Manjaro. You know, it's interesting. So they're going through all of these important reasons. And if we think of something like Antergos and seeing Endeavor sort of come out of that, I believe Endeavor's just done the same exact thing in terms of having this financial host where the money itself is being kept as part of the project. And then that way it sort of ensures that there is a future for the project, that it's being funded, that initiatives that they've undertaken or commitments they've made or whatever have a better chance of continuing forward instead of just a couple guys, and well, not trying to be gender specific, but a couple people just who have been doing this as a hobby type thing, deciding that, you know, for whatever reason, they get a different job, life changes. I mean, it's just sort of the way things are, that they're not going to continue on. And then you've got this user base of people that are relying on it who no longer have access to it. So, I mean, I think this is a pretty smart move. I mean, Manjaro, you know, they were formed in 2011. So, you know, they've certainly stood the test of time. It's certainly a very popular distro. For better, for worse, I think I've seen, for the worst part, maybe some people using an Arch base that weren't ready for it or ready for the commitment of maybe a little bit of extra work that there might be. I think Manjaro does a good job of packaging everything and putting it together, but ultimately there's definitely a bit of reliance on the user to be smart enough to do things. So, you know, it makes sense to me, and I think it's a pretty cool idea. I don't know what you guys think about open source projects trying to become more like businesses, if that's something you see as being a positive or a negative.
I'm all for it.
Yeah, me too.
Well, as it says in one of the articles I was reading, let's see, what was it? So at this stage, it looks like there's a distinction between what will change in the immediate future and what the company will strive for. The biggest immediate change, one that Manjaro supporters may applaud, is that the developers, Philip Mueller and Bernard Landauer, can now commit to the distribution in a full-time capacity
Mm-hmm.
with the eye toward taking on even more employees down the road. And how is that not a good thing?
I agree. I mean, I don't know what people in chat think. I mean, it seems like the four of us are in consensus here. I think all of these things start in most cases as passion projects, which is great because they have an interest. Maybe they're trying to build a resume. There's lots of different reasons, just trying to learn a new skill. Lots of different reasons why you might want to do something like this. And if it gains traction, I mean, we've seen so many projects that had so much potential, really talented people. They come out of the gate with a early release that's really polished. And I mean, not universally, but I'm saying I've seen projects where you go, wow, this is amazing. And then, maybe 6 months or maybe a year, maybe 2 years, it just becomes bigger than that person can handle. And even if they have contributors or collaborators, ultimately they're responsible. And if they can't make money doing it, then they're not going to keep doing it because people need to make money. And it takes once you get past the passion part of it or the interest of like what made it cool in the first place that you wanted to do it for, then it becomes, well, I have obligations, and if I want to continue to pursue it, then it kind of is what it is. And so I'm happy to see more and more Linux distributions do this because I think people take them more seriously too, right? That could be a problem of legitimacy where if you are a company especially and you say, I'd like to base my business off of a particular distro, but that distro in itself is just really a collective of people who, are just interested in it, and it sort of builds and maintains itself based off of that. There are some of those, right? I mean, Arch is not a business, but because it is what it is, it's so big, like you can't imagine Arch ever just disappearing. But for a lot of these smaller distributions that might be doing something interesting, I as a business owner might say, like, that's risky to say I'm going to base all my processes or my something that's earning me revenue and then have that potentially not be solvent. So I think it just makes sense from an adoption standpoint, not just businesses too. I mean, if a user is comfortable with something, and I mean, think about all the Antergos users, and just as an example, where I'm sure there were many thousands of them, and when that went away, they either had to decide, well, am I going to go with Endeavor or go somewhere else? And that may have left a bitter taste in some of their mouths.
How many employees are in the corporation, and are the employees sharing the benefits and contributing? Well, I know they're contributing, but how many employees?
I'm going to say right now, just the two of them.
That's what I think too, Steve. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what I read as well, Steve. So they have 2 full-time, I believe, and then they have someone who's part-time doing some work. And most of these, it isn't that you need like 50 full-time people for a lot of this, because it is certainly you're benefiting from the upstream packaging and testing that's happening in whatever distribution you're based off of, unless you've rolled your own with something like Solus or something like that. But really, you're talking about package maintainers and then people who are actually building out any of the customization around the distribution itself. And you can get a lot done with just a handful of full-time people. If you look at, Elementary is a good example. They've grown quite a lot over the years, but that was their initial model, was to just have a couple core people who were responsible for managing, the day-to-day stuff, and then collaborating with folks where it made sense. And the Linux for Everyone episode 7 had an interview with Elementary, and I mean, it's an interesting story to hear what goes into it. So anyway, I think it's definitely an interesting development. I'm happy to see them do it. I know they've tried their hand in some hardware. They have a laptop out now that runs Manjaro. So they're definitely trying some things. So say hi to some chat folks. Vince, something I need to say is slightly unrelated. Did you alphabetize all the distros on your YouTube banner? Do you think that I am OCD and anal retentive enough to do something like that, Vince? Is that what you're saying? Because you're absolutely right. And it could be just that I opened up an image editor and then I had a folder of all the icons and then I drug them in there and just sort of placed them where they were. That might be it too. I'm sorry if that's unsettling, but it to me that it's the order that my mind wants to see them in. So, hey Nate, good to see you. How are you doing tonight?
Well, Vince asks the questions that need to be answered.
He does the hard-hitting questions. All right, so I mentioned Linux for everyone. So Jason has decided he's going to do a distro challenge, and he had talked about it in the past, and I know he had done distro challenges just as a matter of course on Forbes, I believe. So, but their first one they picked was MX19 Beta, and I'm sure Dolphin will be happy about that. I mean, I've used MX a little bit, and I can see like some of their utilities are really interesting to me. The boot, you know, they have a grub config tool that will, you know, fix your boot. They have a lot of custom tools, and I don't know if you guys used MX at all. Is it something that you tried? Or are you going to try it?
I looked at 18. I'm very interested in 19. It looks really nice.
Okay.
I'm on, like I said, I'm on the 19.2 version, and I really haven't had a chance to play with it today, but it's still playing, so it's better than my Manjaro experiment, I should say.
All right.
Tomorrow I'll be playing a lot with it.
So I guess I'll extend that out even further. I mean, I know Steve's take on this, but XFCE, it's certainly stable and it's very dependable, and it's got all of the traits of a solid, you know, basis for your system that you don't need to worry about. I don't know why. It just doesn't give me the zing, you know, to quote a children's movie. Like I try it. I go and I try Ubuntu, or I try, you know, the Manjaro default release with XFCE, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. But maybe that's why. Maybe it's too boring.
Well, I mean, it's to me. I mean, it's stable. I'm just always. I just can't get used to like GNOME. You know, I did like what Endless has done. I like what Zorn has done, but there's still something about GNOME that doesn't appeal to me. And KDE is just like, to me, so far out there. I mean, I know there are a lot of people that love it, but it's just too much to it. And I don't know. XFCE just works for me. Maybe because I'm old and it's old. I don't know.
I agree with that.
I don't necessarily see it as being an old versus new kind of thing, because you can make XFCE look great. I mean, I've never not been able to get it to look good. There's some fragmentation in the control panels and settings that are a little confusing. The fact that you set the theme, but then you go to the Windows settings, and you have to set it there as well, and the fonts. It's a little sort of interesting that it's kind of fragmented like that. But that said, I mean, it is definitely like the Windows XP of the Linux world, to be blasphemous about it for a second. I mean, it's the known commodity, right? Everybody knows it, likes it, uses it, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So that's why I was going to say I'm not a huge fan of MX, but Lamer just said that you can install a different DE in the, I guess, the installer, so package installer. So I may try that. I mean, I may see, because it is on a Debian base, and that might be interesting to try that.
I'll have to try the. Can you try the Plasma on that?
I'm not sure. Lamer just said you can install a DE from the MX package installer. So if you go in there, maybe search for Plasma and see what it says.
I'll have to.
What would be interesting would be maybe if there was a way to pick when you were installing. Anyway, so I know a lot of people enjoy MX. Take it for what you will, but it is the #1 on DistroWatch. You know, that I don't know if people put much stock into that because it's more or less a popularity contest. But if it is a popularity contest, then they're very popular.
Yeah. Well, I was watching Ghosty's review of the 19.19.2 beta, and it looks like Dolphin and team have thrown in some really nice customization as far as like some of the themes. They really seem to have worked hard on this one, and I mean, not that they didn't work hard on the other ones, but I mean, a lot have gone into really making this MX look nice.
Yeah. No, they have done a nice job on the theming. I'm not a huge fan of the bar on the left. It's a little odd to me.
Yeah, that and I personally, I just their little MX symbol just looks out of place a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I think it is it is obviously doing the right thing for a lot of people, and so I don't know that I would change if I had something that was that popular. Even if I thought, you know, maybe we should try this or that. At that point, you have to sort of ask yourself, is it worth, you know?
Yeah, I kind of equate Dolphin and his team with like Mark Greaves and his team on Peppermint. They just seem to really care about their users and listen to them and want to do good by them. You know, it's just they're very responsive to their community, and that's really nice.
Yeah, and that definitely bolsters. You know, it's just I guess Peppermint you would characterize the same way, right? Peppermint is not a, I guess, major distribution necessarily, but the people who use it absolutely love it and love it for good reason.
That was my first distro when I first left Windows. Was Peppermint.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not one of the first few that I tried, and it's the only one that I could stick with. You know, I was glad that, like, you know, like with them, that they went more XFCE than they did with, you know, LXDE. You know, LXDE also drives me kind of nuts. That, talk about antiquated. I know Dan Simmons, if you're watching this, no offense, but I like what, you know, Peppermint had done, and I really fell in love with it when they went more XFCE.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see what the Linux for Everyone crew thinks of it. And he said that they're going to be doing it for a period of a month, which I also thought was interesting. So they're going to take an entire month with it and really, I guess, give everybody an opportunity to look at it and put it through its paces. So that time period is also an interesting idea. So
Well, this is my first shot at it. The first time I pushed the kernel too high, and I broke it.
Well, how else would you know where the limit was? You have to try. Were you able to fix it, or did you have to reinstall?
I'm not that technically expertise at it, and I just I got the USB stick here, so it's fun to do.
Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if you've noticed, the Cubicle Nate has arrived.
Yay! Well,
Hello,
I saw,
Nate.
you know, Adam was on there, and Steve, and then Ken, and then you're here, Eric. So, you know, whatever.
And you joined anyway. Wow, what a trooper! What a trooper!
No, you're talking MX, and I was actually in the process of carrying a shelf that I bought, like a, you know, bookshelf,
Mhm.
and I rapidly put it down. I said I had to, you know, turn my laptop on, dock it, do all this fun stuff because I'm a big fan of MX. Now, I do bleed green for OpenSUSE, not NVIDIA, but I am a big fan of MX, and actually I do contribute to the documentation for MX now too. So
Nice.
That's right. Yeah, you were documenting something you weren't quite sure how it worked, and you weren't.
yes, I'm stealing a lot from OpenSUSE now on AppArmor and how they do things. Just kind of building a very simple wiki for that. I have to publish it yet, but anyway, that's what I'm working on.
And have you, in fact, learned more about AppArmor through this?
Yes, I have indeed, and I can say it's not something that I would want to be an expert on.
Okay.
I
Adam, is
have a
AppArmor something you have to take into consideration for your servers? Do you guys run that kind of stuff?
Sometimes I have to deal with that, but not all the time. AppArmor's pretty permissive by default, but there's only a couple applications where I've needed like mandatory access control, and in those cases, I just use CentOS and SE Linux.
Gotcha. It's always on my system, but I've never actually done anything with it. It's just sort of there, you know. So I guess you're right. It must be fairly permissive.
It's typically, and this is my understanding, and so I could be wrong because I've been wrong many times. But my understanding is that whoever builds the package, whoever maintains that, whatever distribution, they actually build the AppArmor profile, so you shouldn't actually ever have to mess with it. It's just kind of like a lane to keep it in.
Okay.
So if you have to mess with it, then something has either gone wrong, or you have I don't know, something wasn't configured properly from the get-go. But I actually did have issues with AppArmor and Snaps. The big thing is how AppArmor integrates with Snaps. That's kind of the big thing there.
Well, I'm still learning the command lines, and that's where I think I messed up. Is I inputted something wrong, and I mean the kernel was running fine in MX, but it just all of a sudden I got this distortion, and everything went falling down.
Nate Dennis in chat said, "Great, tell me how to turn password prompt off." I don't know if that's part of AppArmor or not.
Well, I don't know about that. I know he's been asking the
I don't know.
question earlier in the room about, he can get past like the login. I mean, and that's easy to kill a password on that. But I guess he made a where he has been trying to copy images to the wallpaper folder, and that's usually like either hidden or part of the system, depending on what distribution you're using. And every time he wants to do this, it brings up he needs the password in order to save it to the system file, and he wants to be able to bypass that and not have to do that.
Then you have to change the permissions of that folder so that his user has either group permissions or whatever for that. I need to open up the chat.
Got it. Well, that is really cool. I'm happy to hear that you are involved in multiple things now. That's you're like I have to come up with a new Nate, Credible Nate. No, that doesn't make it.
No,
I'll come up with something.
We'll just leave it cubicle. That's because I'm in my super cubicle now with the lights off, so you can't see my mess.
The Nate cave.
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh my goodness. So yes, MX will be on the next few podcasts, I assume. So if you haven't listened to, and I'm not a shill for Linux for everyone, but it's a pretty cool show. I think Jason does a good job of.
Oh, I'll be a shill.
Okay. Yeah, he does a good job of, I think, personifying, giving sort of a softer edge to some of the hard tech that can be, part of Linux. And it wouldn't surprise me a bit if there were a lot of new people interested because of someone like him being so sort of like warm and inviting. And I know, Steve, you've been trying to get back to the roots of being accessible to newer users and trying to put out content for that. So
Hello.
Ricky. Hi, Ricky.
Sorry if anybody can't see me. For some reason, Arch Linux is giving my webcam a complete headache. I'm on one of my other machines right now, not my normal Peppermint machine.
Well, that'll
Well, you
teach
said
it.
it. Yeah.
There you go. You learned your lesson.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, this webcam is pretty much over a decade old. I need to get me another Logitech C920.
Fair enough. How are you tonight, Ricky?
Oh, I'm doing good. I just pimped out my Arch Linux to look like GNOME 2.
Did you install Mate? Mate.
I installed GNOME Free, and then I installed GNOME Flashback. Flashback is an add-on to GNOME Free that makes GNOME Free completely look identical to the final version of GNOME 2 that was released in Ubuntu 10.10.
I knew that they had that, but I thought they had discontinued it at some point. So I guess not.
Well, it's pretty much back from the dead in one form or another.
Okay.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right, question though.
Hmm?
Why not just Mate?
Well, the reason why I chose GNOME in the first place is I want to use GNOME for a little while since I didn't have a chance before to use it. I have an Ubuntu Mate machine right behind me on the other side here that's a gaming rig. So over here for my Arch Linux hard drive, I need another form of an environment. So I chose GNOME. Main reason why I went with GNOME is very simple. Since that one on the other side is a Windows-like, this one is going to get me as close to a Mac as possible.
Fair enough. Variety is the spice of life, as they say.
Respectfully, why would you do that to yourself?
Just the learning experience. I've been using for Linux for almost a year, and this is going to be my first time using GNOME on a full-time basis. And plus, if I want to use normal GNOME, I could just log out, go into LXDM, and just go into GNOME on Xorg, which that's the type of GNOME I'll use anyway. And plus, I updated it to 3.34 just recently, which just came out, and it's really fast on my Intel i5 machine that I'm using.
Well, funny enough, you mentioned that. So, actually, that was something that I wanted to talk about. So they, that's what they are claiming is the major benefit to 334 is drastic. It's dramatically improved the responsiveness and consistency of the desktop, even on slower or older hardware. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I have noticed that on 4 gigabytes of RAM, an i5 processor, and Arch Linux to boot, 3.34 is extremely fast on this older machine. I kind of want to ask myself how fast would it actually be on older hardware with 4 gigabytes of RAM.
Well, you know, what would be an interesting.
Excuse me?
I was just going to say what might be an interesting test is if you could somehow try 332 or older and then compare that to 334. I mean, I don't know if you have the interest in trying that, but it would be. Anyway, I just, I don't disagree that they've made those improvements. I just wonder, like, you're saying it's anecdotally, like you notice that it's different, which is great.
Because I have tried, because the first time I tried GNOME was GNOME 3.28, and in my mind, comparing 3.34 to 3.28 is night and day. 3.28 on my hardware sucked. I could not get it to run for the life of me. 3.34 on this machine specifically, it runs really snappy. It's stable. There's no crashing errors or nothing. It is a beautiful experience with GNOME 3. I can actually use it now.
Dennis is asking, can he just change permissions for the whole root system?
No, God, no! Please don't do that. I mean, you can. You won't. It won't be good. Yeah. So the user and the group. I mean, so you've got the user ownership and then the group ownership, and so you're going to see things that are mixed at times, and things depending on your distribution, or they'll be the same because most users also have a corresponding group. Now, Arch has just a users group, which is slightly different. But if you're on, any Debian base or I think maybe, I don't know, native OpenSUSE has it as well. But yeah, those permissions are sort of there for a reason. And if you change too many things, you're probably going to have a problem. So he says too late. Well, let us know how it goes. Yeah, you got to be careful with that. And to be honest, I did the same thing when I first started. Coming from Windows and DOS and stuff, permissions, that just wasn't a thing, right? So I was like, well, if it won't let me do it, then I'll just make it mine, and then I can do it, and it won't ask me for a password. But what I started to run into was file permissions matter because some programs really expect certain things to be in a certain permissive state. Like, for example, SSH keys. So I do a lot with servers where I need an SSH key to log into remote systems. If your permissions aren't set properly on those keys, those applications, like if you try to SSH, it won't even let you. It'll just say your key's not. So there are definitely some things. So one thing I'll tell you, if you're not aware of, you may want to look into this. There's a corresponding way to do configuration changes in your home directory that override system-wide values. So you can do things like theming, fonts, icons. There's different programs themselves that will look first in your home folder to see if there's a configuration file, and if not, then it'll go look in like the etc folder or something like that. So depending on what it is you're trying to do, there may be a way for you to do that in a more conventional way in the Linux world where it doesn't break, or you don't run into those problems. But without like knowing specifically, it's kind of hard to say exactly. Anyway. And hi, Rose. Good to see you here. Sorry I wasn't keeping up with the chat. I've learned that streaming is sort of like juggling. You've got a lot of balls in the air at the same time, and some people are really good at it and make it look effortless, and some people like me struggle. So
no, it gets hard. I mean, because you're talking, you got something going on. You're trying to maybe try to keep a little bit of eye contact on the screen and that. And then people pop in and oh my.
Right.
How long have you been there?
I haven't looked at chat in 10 minutes. Like, yeah. Well, practice.
Whenever I do a live stream, I have the chat on the other side of the screen, and I have my live stream on the other side. This way I can see the chat perfectly. The one thing that I am so blessed, and Steve and the rest of my Linux buddies all know this, the thing that I'm blessed with is how good the Linux community has been wonderful to me over the past year since I've joined you guys. And all I can really say is thank you for the knowledge and the learning experience that you guys have given me, because here's the thing. People can argue that there are better communities, but we all know in this room there's no community like this. There just isn't.
Well, it's true. The Linux community is still lots of warm and fuzzy people, like Dark One. He is probably the warmest, fuzziest Linux member I've ever known. Like literally every time I see him, I want to grab him. I just want to grab him like one of those like really high around the neck kind of hugs, and just like nuzzle him.
Mate, lying doesn't suit you.
Oh, speak of the devil.
It's not. It's more like a fantasy.
What's up, Matt?
I'm not sure what to say to that. That was the most interesting welcome I may have ever heard on a.
I got nothing, Eric.
Hey, Matt, how's it going?
I don't know at this point.
Were you better 30 seconds ago?
Apparently.
well, see, that's something. If even I can make the dark one uncomfortable for just a moment, that is a victory. So go ahead and chalk that up into my victory. The only victory I've ever had right now. I just got here.
I am impressed. Genuinely impressed, Nate.
I knew all
Obstinate
that
is
positivity would pay off eventually.
That's right. Obstinate has returned. Oh my goodness. So what's going on, Matt? What are you up to tonight?
Just noticed that this stream was live, so I figured I'd jump in. And Adam, Catalina, old Mac Pro, don't mix.
All right, let's hear it.
I have a 2008 MacBook Pro that I have like a weird like Hackintosh type of deal going on. There's a program called by DOS Dude 1 that allows you to run unsupported Mac with the current OS. So like I had Mojave, so I want to try Catalina. Yeah, that like essentially blew up the hard drive. So like anytime I try to reinstall Mac OS, anybody who says this is easy is full of poo-poo. Because literally the only thing that the options, when you go to the options or you try to force it to boot from the DVD or CD or the USB, it only detects the drive, which is EFI, and it only registers as EFI. And that's it. So, needless to say, Catalina is a big no-no on old Macs.
Well, so then you take that old Mac and you can put Linux on it and get a new Mac, right?
Well, right now Deepin's actually on it because I need at least a usable OS.
So speaking of Apple, someone was going to bring it up eventually. Mr. Adam, your thoughts on the keynote?
I mean, I'm happy that like some of their services are coming out soon. The camera stuff on the new iPhone is pretty much the major thing, and that's really impressive what they've done. But at the same time, it's like,
Is it overkill though? Do you see it as being something that's useful to normal people?
People love to take pictures, man. People take a lot of pictures.
Well, and they love their pictures to look like a professional took them, right?
Yeah. And I think one of the bigger things that probably most people didn't think about was the front facing camera is 12 megapixel now. So you can actually take like pretty good selfies without having to, finagle the camera around and figure it out.
So I know you love your iPad Pro, and what do you think of the evolution of that? It looked definitely. So Ryan actually made a video, DOS Geek, and he had said, the marketing materials all show the keyboard cover. They're really sort of planting that idea, like this is now something you can use.
Yeah, I mean, as a laptop, like I have my work laptops and I have a gaming laptop that is just there for gaming. But as far as like actually a laptop, my iPad Pro is my laptop. I mean, it's perfect for everything that I do, and it does a lot more than I thought it would. But with iPad OS 13, and I've been running the beta for quite a while now, it actually opens up quite a lot of computer-esque functionality to it.
So that's the one that has different multitasking and the mouse support and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, the mouse support it's there, but it's not really a mainstream feature. It's meant for an accessibility thing.
Okay.
But no, it has lots of support for like plugging in. So the iPad Pro I have is a USB-C port, so you can put an adapter on there for extra USB ports or SD cards or USB sticks or whatever, and being able to open up external storage on the iPad, like just plug in a USB drive. I've even tested it with a hard drive, like a 2.5 inch. It'll power a 2.5 inch through that port, and like you can just like having like I have like a 3 terabyte drive that I hang around in my bag, and being able to pull that out and, you know, throw some videos that I took on my phone, you know, on the cloud or anything, or you know, take those take things off my phone and put them on my iPad, and then render them out on my iPad, and I
Mm.
can store them on the drive after the fact. That's really
That
nice.
that was definitely always one of my biggest problems. And when I first moved to Android, it was because I was doing IT work, and I would have files that I just couldn't get at on my iPhone and my iPad and stuff like that, and it really bothered me. You know, I got the whole point of why they were doing it, but it just made it feel less capable to me. And so the fact that they've sort of realized that and have now
They
opened
have
that up.
solved that. Yeah. So it's not just the external storage, but you can actually access the internal storage, just not the system itself, right? Like
Yeah.
the actual iOS and stuff is not available.
Which is
you can
for
but
the
you can
best.
yeah, you can think of it as like a home folder, right? Like you can create arbitrary folder structures and store arbitrary files in your on your iPad or on your iPhone even. They both share that feature.
How much of the storage do you actually have access to? Like, is the system taking up a big chunk, or?
I don't know. I have a lot of stuff on there, so I couldn't tell you.
Okay.
Mine's 512 gigs, so I have plenty of space. But
Gotcha.
yeah, I think the system probably takes up about 5 or 6 gig of it, maybe. Is my guess. But it's super useful. Like people don't think about a lot of the things you can do with an iPad, especially an iPad Pro. Like I have a terminal on there. I can SSH into servers. I can, you know, I can work. I have an IDE in there that I can work on, like, you know, web stuff or whatever, you know,
Hmm.
just remotely. And there's a lot of tools on there just for, you know, the stuff I do at work or even the stuff I do for fun. You know, I have an app called IA Writer. It's an excellent markdown like writing app, and and it can connect straight to WordPress and other things and just publish right from the app. That's super useful for when I write on my site, which I don't do too much these days, it seems. Um, you know, I have video editors, there's illustration tools, there's graphic editing tools, there's games. There's a lot you can do on that device, and at the same time I get like several days worth of battery out of it because, you know, the battery's amazing. I have the cellular model, so I have internet everywhere I go.
Well, I don't think anyone can really question that Apple dominates on the tablet for a reason.
Yeah.
I mean, even myself, like I have both an iPad and an Android tablet. I find myself using the Android tablet mostly because I'm just consuming content. I'm not actually doing any work on it. But you know, I think Apple to me is still interesting. The idea that they are trying to talk more about privacy and you know, make it a focus. And so
Yeah.
in terms of whether or not people like Apple and their ecosystem and all of that, they're really making it
You're talking about privacy. There's actually a really good feature that they added in iOS 13, and it's the ability to allow location access once. So,
Oh, wow.
if you
Okay.
open up an app like that needs your location, you can say, okay, just this once you can have it. But then once you close the app, it no longer has access to your location.
That's actually really smart because it does bug me when an app says that it needs permission, and then it just basically, once you say yes, if you don't remember to turn it off, then that just
Yeah.
means it has it forever.
In this case, it's just once and you're good.
Yeah,
And then-
that's pretty smart.
Yeah, it's little things like that. You know, they build all kinds of encryption into their stuff. You know, iMessage itself is end-to-end encrypted. There's loads of privacy and security things. Safari actually has a really good anti-fingerprinting thing. Basically, they make every iPad and every iPhone and every Mac look exactly like the other one. So they have like a generic profile that every Apple device just follows. So when they go to fingerprint your browser for ad tracking, all they get is everyone has an iPad.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So things like that are really good.
Well, that's cool. I mean, it seems like they are doing what people are asking them to do with the camera and things like that. So, you know, me personally, I'm happy, you know, with Android, and it does what I need it to do. And I'm actually really looking forward to more Linux options coming out and seeing if that's actually going to be viable.
Like the Pine Phone and the Librem 5 coming out soon. They're going to be our very first 2 full-blown Linux options that are not Android.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how those pan out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't expect them to sweep the market, but if they can find their niche, then
I think a viable third player option is really, really needed. Not gonna lie.
Well,
Um,
I don't think anyone can expect the $150 Pine Phone to be an iPhone killer by any stretch of imagination.
Yeah.
It's more of a proof
I
of
would expect
concept.
a $700 phone to be though.
yeah.
Well, I have my own. I don't want to be
Managing
too negative.
expectations.
Yeah.
Did
I don't.
And did you hear the news that Firefox is switching from HTTP to DNS? Mozilla announced it in a news report not long ago. There's for privacy and security concerns, they are switching from HTTP to full-blown DNS. They think that switching from one to the other is going to make the browser a bit safer.
So what you're saying is so they're going to do DNS over HTTPS instead of being just open, because you can do pretty like man in the middle kind of stuff, and if you don't have that encryption between. Go ahead, Matt.
No, I was going to say, because it's kind of what I have to do right now. Like when I'm at this recording space, I actually have to use Google's public DNS to get around my the local DNS open DNS settings because of content blocking and all that crap. So assume me, I like sports. What do you want me to say? And the way I have security is it's the only reason I use Opera is because it's a built-in proxy /VPN into it. So instead of having Google's wide open DNS, but I have to set all that stuff manually. So if Firefox is going to do that from default, that's actually really cool.
Yeah, and this is when people say what's the relevance of Firefox, and these are the types of things that they are pushing for. Blocking trackers by default.
Yeah, well, if I had to choose the lesser of 3 evils being Mozilla, Google, and Microsoft, I would choose Firefox over the other 2. Because everybody knows what Microsoft and Google are doing in the background. If you compare to what they're doing, along with what Facebook is doing to what Mozilla is doing, Mozilla is hardly doing a thing.
Well, and it's a shame to see them continue to have their user base eroding, but
exactly,
as long as they can remain viable, I think just them doing these things puts the idea in people's minds that, well, why would they do that? Why is that important? And maybe just at least bring up the conversation. So
exactly.
So.
Well, Eric, by the way, to mention your point about the temporary app permissions that Adam mentioned as one of the features in iOS, there's actually an application in Android that allows similar. It's called Bouncer.
Oh, okay.
So something you might want to take a look at. It's in the Play Store.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you for that. I will definitely do that.
That's one Ryan's big gripes with Android is that you said it and it's
all or nothing, right? I mean, and you don't remember that because nobody looks at it, right? Not nobody, but some of them, anytime there's more than like 3 permissions on an app, I'm always like, I'm kind of like, I don't know if I really need this app, Yeah,
it's like, why does my wallpaper need access to my contacts?
Yeah, exactly. And that happens
or to the internet or whatever. It is. But
so may I just make the point that there is nothing free, and
yes.
for everyone that believes that it's free, you're giving them something.
Usually your data, your privacy, your identity,
right,
or money.
The other thing, like, so if that wallpaper app is running in the background, it's just sitting there funneling data, and
this is why I'm okay with spending money on apps. In fact, there's some game that my kid was playing on one of the Android thingies. We have tablet. I don't know if it's a tablet or phone, and it kept like doing ads. I said, "Hey, can we pay for this so we don't see these ads all the time?" He goes, "No, I want to see the ads." I'm like, What? No, there are no ads. When I play Super Nintendo, there are no ads on my Super Nintendo, no in-game purchases. That's what makes it a good gaming system.
But you know what, Nate? There's this sort of
And get off my lawn.
But if you, so what I've started noticing is that YouTube is pushing YouTube Kids really hard, and it's because some of the most popular videos, actually all of the most of the popular videos on YouTube, where we're talking billions of views, are kids videos of adults unwrapping stuff like those LOL dolls and Hatchimals and all these little things that my daughter are into right now, and I'll catch her getting sucked into these YouTube things, and I've actually had to get her, like, take her off of YouTube Kids, because YouTube Kids, you think, oh, you know, it's kids, it has kids right in the name. There is so much garbage in there, and it's so much of it is marketing to little kids. And you know, and I guess it's a little hypocritical because I grew up with G.I. Joe and He-Man, and like those cartoons only existed to sell those products. They were only made by Hasbro.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well,
So
speaking of YouTube and kids, did you hear about the FCC fining YouTube for violating COPA?
oh really? No, I didn't see that. Was it anything
yeah.
meaningful?
I don't know all the details. All I know is the FCC gave them a huge fine for violating COPA. That's all I know.
Last estimate was 200 million for the fine. Yeah, I was just saying Google makes that up in like a day.
Yeah. Whoopity doo. Oh well. Well, I mean, just in case anyone thinks that they can just put their kid in front of YouTube Kids, it's garbage. I mean, it's not universally garbage. I mean, there's some stuff like She Loves Brave Wilderness. If you guys have ever heard of that, Cody Peterson, he's a goober that lets like bugs bite him and stuff. Anyway, there's lots of stuff that she watches that is perfectly fine. I'm not one of those parents that's like, no, my kid can't have a screen. I mean, it's the reality of the world. The more I tell her no, the more she's going to want to do it. And if I can give her something meaningful that she's actually learning from, great. But when I find her watching this junk, and to me it's sad because every you mentioned apps, Nate, with ads in them. Every kids app I've ever installed for her, with very few exceptions, were number one, garbage. Just they weren't even built to be good. They were just built because it's a way to funnel ads to these kids, and so the idea that these creators are basically putting that stuff out there, and that Google and it isn't just Android, it's my iPad as well is just as bad. The fact that Apple supposedly has these standards in place that keeps predatory practices at bay and privacy, I don't know, some of that stuff is really shady.
It is.
So I monitor pretty closely what my kids watch on, when they're in my house, which is most of the time. I monitor pretty closely what they're watching, and I do like them I do like for it to be educational. But one of the things I do enforce is if it's something that I don't like my kid being on a phone or a tablet like this, because it's not good for the neck, it's not good for the near point stress on the eyes and everything else. So I'm actually making them use the media computer in the living room, and I say, you can use the keyboard here. Here's a keyboard. No, it doesn't speak search. And by the way, it runs MX Linux. So MX Linux 19, by the way, which runs very well.
It's funny. I put Deepin on my old laptop for my daughter because I thought, what's a good UI for a 7-year-old? And she really likes Deepin, for what it's worth.
Yeah, Deepin's nice.
Well, the thing about Deepin is it has one of the most beautiful environments out of all the Linux distros. I mean, Deepin has always had a very beautiful environment, and for people that love Macs and love Apple devices, you put a Mac person in front of Deepin, they'll get used to it in minutes.
Well,
Because
the way that I arrived at Deepin was mainly so I had put Endless OS on there for her, and it just wasn't working. I mean, she was having problems because of the way their window management is. You really can't see what's open and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
And like it just didn't work. I gave it a shot because we were trying it, and I thought, eh. And so from there, though, she got used to those big colorful icons and like and so I thought, well, I can't just put her on, you know, Plasma or like just a normal operating system because she's or desktop environment because she's going to be confused by it. So I thought, well, let me try Deepin and see what she thinks. You know, and of course they've got the beautiful wallpaper, and she's like, oh, I want the, you know, the floating whale one, and you know, like they've put so much effort into making it look very clean, and it all works really well. They have a audio recorder built in, so she can record her voice. You know, they've got a halfway decent painting program, drawing program. So I mean, out of the box, hear me.
Yeah, you're good now.
you're good. You're
tip top
good.
now.
There it goes. Yes, well, it is time for everybody to get back and be in the hotel, so they're probably saturating the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, probably. No, I agree with you, Eric. I think Deepin doesn't get enough credit. If anything, he gets a lot of unnecessary flack, shall we say. Speaking of Deepin, though, did we already discuss the bigger news as it relates to that?
No, go ahead and bring that up. Actually, it's a really cool story.
Deepin has been selected by Huawei to go on select models in China for their hardware. And these are not like junk, like throw it on crappy hardware. This is a limited selection. I think it's stock, but it's on their MateBook line, which is their main computer line. That's the MateBook Pro X Pro, the MateBook 13, and the MateBook 14. I've played with the MateBook D14. They're everything the Mac Pros wish they were. They're the current Mac Pros. Adam, that is not a knock on the older ones.
It's all good, man.
Well, you know, funny enough, when I was looking for a laptop and I got this XPS, that was one that kept coming up over and over and over was the MateBook as just being a really solid system. And they're not cheap either in build quality or necessarily even in price. Like they are competitive in that range. They're not trying to undercut. I mean, they're building. Some people are like, "Oh, it's a shameless knockoff," you know, Apple kind of thing. But it's obviously not because it's a PC. But I think it's a similar build quality. I mean, you could say that about a lot of manufacturers, but so it was. I mean, a lot of people think very highly of it, and so good hardware. A Chinese-based distribution that already does a good job of, you know, being appealing and easy to use. If my daughter can use it, kind of hard to see how that could go wrong, you know.
Well, then you're going to get the conspiracy nuts. It's China, yada yada yada. And I think I already gave my diatribe on that. Basically, the short version of my take is if you use RAM, a motherboard, a GPU, a CPU, a hard drive, an SSD, an NVMe drive, X, Y, or Z, and if it's labeled made in China, stop using it, or you got no like
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I mean, and it's like you and I were going back and forth in Telegram today, but I mean, the reality is I'm not a hardware engineer and I'm not a software engineer. I use things that people tell me whether or not, you know, in best case scenarios, it's open source software, so it's been peer reviewed to some extent. Hardware is almost universally closed. I mean, there are lots of people who might look at it and try to reverse engineer it and stuff like that. And I'm sure if a company had a pattern of being abusive, that it would get found out eventually. But that hasn't happened. I can't remember. I know there was that server controversy where the Amazon servers had a chip, an extra chip.
Yeah, it was Amazon and Apple, and I think Dell were the three. And every one of them was like, no.
Right. It turned out to not be what they had thought it might have been. So I don't see it in best interest of trying to.
You know, so I figure the most if you the more you can open source, the better off you are. I mean,
Mhm.
really, that's so. I realize my hardware might be compromised. My, I guess that'd be it really for me. Certainly my ISP is compromised. That's definite. But yeah, just whatever I can get away with, the most that I can have not compromised. So but you had me thinking there, Dark One. This actually made in the USA. So maybe if I get Zoom on this, Zoom will run on 64K.
Do you have enough memory
No,
to even get Zoom on that? First of all,
Yeah, well, it's got an Ethernet port. See there? 10 base T, baby. 10 base T. That's all you need. 10 base T. I think that you're just wasting it. It's all fluff.
I was gonna say, is that the revamped one that they did where they crammed everything in the keyboard?
No, that's the original Commodore 64.
Yeah, well, no,
not revamped.
I was gonna say, you know which one I'm talking about, though, right? Because they did that like revamp of like modern hardware, but they.
No, this is the original.
Yeah, no, I know. But I was gonna say, like they came out one, I don't know, like 6 or 7 years ago. That was like they crammed everything inside the keyboard, and it was like modern hardware, which was interesting.
Oh yeah, the Commodore USA.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the guy that started that he passed.
Oh.
But actually it was doing really well. Like he actually had Commodore. He had something called like a VIC line. He had I think he was doing Amigas too. It was really cool what he was doing. And he had like I want to say it was a custom 2 interface. I want to say, but it had the Amiga Workbench, original Amiga Workbench, the original like color scheme. So it kind of had that cyan Commodore look with orange highlights. I didn't think it was very attractive, but I thought it was neat. I liked it. So actually, I was going to say people are a little bit about the Huawei thing. It's got Deepin Linux on it. To me, that's exciting news. I mean, from my perspective, okay, I'm not going to use Deepin. That's just it doesn't do anything for me. It's also not OpenSUSE, so or MX because I like those two.
And you know the Tumbleweed fanboy allow to have better driver support.
Exactly. I agree.
And era of Linux because of drivers.
Mm-hmm.
Because of Android, because of Chrome OS, we got better driver support. Say what you want about them as an operating system, etc. Totally get that. But you can't deny that because of the push that Google did with those on the kernel end, that we didn't on the desktop benefit.
Exactly.
No, we did. And Google wasn't always the bad guy. Not saying he's a bad. I'm not saying they're the bad guy now, but but they weren't. I mean, I'm not going to say that. I don't want to have that associated with me. Cubicle Nate says Google's the bad guy. I'm not going to say anybody's a bad guy. I'm not the judge. Anyway, I think that they did a lot of the Google Summer of Code, all that push that they did. Good for over 10 years now. I think Google Summer of Code. When did that start? It was late '80s, I believe, maybe mid. Anyway, but all the effort they put, I mean, they really actually did a lot for the open source community. It was a slogan for a long time.
I think they forgot that slogan because now it seems to be let's do some evil.
All right, I reset my Wi-Fi and everything, so it looks like it's back to green, and we should be okay.
Okay, that's good.
I think it kind of killed it for a minute there, so...
I think what happened, Eric, is Linux just held a huge stop sign at your router and said, okay, move nice and slowly this way. Everything will be fine.
Well, hotel Wi-Fi providers are not the most...
reliable. It's usually AT&T, so enough said.
Yeah, I don't even know if I could claim its reliability so much as I think it's more about they're filling a need, and it doesn't have to be done well. They don't have to provide excellent service. So I know I'm not the only person, but whenever I got this hotel, I was looking at reviews and I searched Wi-Fi because I wanted to see what people said. And there are a lot of great hotels that get good ratings, and people will say, but the Wi-Fi is terrible. I also wouldn't mind paying the upgrade charge for a better connection, even though I think that's kind of sleazy. But they don't even offer it. Like, this is, you get what you get. I mean, it's perfectly fine now. I don't know what happened. I disconnected from Wi-Fi and then reconnected, and it seems perfectly fine now. So there you go.
Well, that's
Well, I know
good.
I ran into the problem when I was doing all those streams in Vermont. I had signed up at a certain time, and you had to refresh it every 24 hours. And I didn't know that at first. And that's why a couple of my streams, I got knocked off. And thankfully, whoever was still on with me, he was able to carry it on until I got signed back in and got back on.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Steve,
Yeah.
I figured it was just because it was up in Vermont. Being from Maine originally, I totally. all I'm gonna say is one word, and it's two words crammed together, and it's called Fairpoint.
Oh my goodness. Well, Dan's here. Hey Dan, how are you? He says it's better,
Hey, Dan.
so that's good. Dan says it's better, then it's better. All right. So there were a couple other little things that I wanted to mention before we go any further, I guess. So Ubuntu 1910 is going to be obviously a month from now. They said the 17th, I think, is the date, so it's literally about 5 weeks away. And so they have a feature freeze. They had a feature freeze on August 22nd. Kernel freeze is on the 26th. The final freeze is on October 10th. There's a beta release on September 26th, which is in 2 weeks from now. And then the final release is October 17th. So this is going to be Ubuntu, all the variants and flavors. Aowan Ermine, I think is how you say that. So for folks that have any interest, I know we have a lot of people in Big Daddy Linux that are involved with a lot of these different flavors of Ubuntu. Bill had asked me, you know, could I test the new NVIDIA? There's a new NVIDIA switcher taskbar kind of thing, and it didn't work. The Wi-Fi for me right now on the builds that I downloaded wasn't working, so I really couldn't do it. But anyway, I guess the point I'm trying to make is if you have any interest or time, this is a good time to maybe start jumping in and downloading the daily build and just trying it out, whether it's even if it's just in VirtualBox. You know, try it out, see if you can find bugs, and if you're so inclined, maybe give feedback, because at this point, this is when they're sort of running through.
Exactly.
You know, if you find it now, it becomes a better release in October.
Exactly. The one thing that I find it interesting about Ubuntu in general is this is going to be the very first the very first new distro to take advantage of Ubuntu's new release schedule, since they're no longer doing. I believe that with the new schedule they announced a long time ago, they said they're not doing alpha anymore, but I believe they're still doing beta. I believe. I think that's how it goes.
Yeah, there's a beta. They're not doing alphas because there was too much work around managing the and there it goes. It just pops back. Yeah, I don't know if it's I'm in between points and my maybe I'm bouncing between.
Yeah, I think as more
It's load
devices get on,
balancing, right?
it and also the bubble shrinks. The
Yeah.
Wi-Fi bubble starts to
Yeah,
contract.
I was in a room right by the main office last time, and I got killer connection, and I'm about, you know, I'm way further away this time, so I wonder. So next time I have to be more strategic about it, I guess. All right, sorry guys. I know the stream. At this point, I'm not thinking it's going to be super reliable. Anyway, the point I wanted to make, and Bill was in chat, and he did mention. So if you have any interest or time or energy, now would be a great time to do some testing, give some feedback to those folks who are working hard on our behalf, who expect nothing in return other than us to tell them that maybe something's not working right. And the sooner the better, and the more often the better. So,
Yep.
The other thing I wanted to mention really quickly before this dies again was Big Daddy Linux Live. So there's 2 episodes this Saturday. There's the Europe edition at 3 p.m. Eastern, and then there's the main edition at 8 p.m. And for anyone who's in chat, if you haven't watched Biddle, Big Daddy Linux Live, definitely worth watching if you're enjoying this at all. This is definitely a shameless sort of ripoff of what Rocco does, but maybe my slight spin on it. And that's every Saturday at 8 p.m. And then this week, specifically once a month, the second Saturday of every month, there's a stream for the European folks at 3 p.m. The other thing I wanted to say was that Destination Linux on Sunday, normally they tape and they make the Zoom chat open to patrons. But in this case, on Sunday, they have a special announcement, and they're going to be live streaming to YouTube, hopefully better than I've done this evening. But they have an announcement to make on Sunday. So if you're a fan of Destination Linux and you follow the podcast, or you like Ryan or Michael or Zeb or Noah, they've got some things going on that they wanted to make folks aware of. And so if you have any interest to watch the live stream, and I don't know if it's just going to be folks on YouTube or if they're going to open it up on the Zoom side as well. But anyway, that is Sunday, September 15th at 1 p.m.
Yeah, I made a comment that Zeb finally got them all on peppermint.
Could be. Who knows?
This is a bit of breaking news just now. I just got into distro, gone on distro to see what's going on. Apparently, as of right now, Manjaro Linux 18.1.0 has officially released.
Yeah, Ken was on earlier, and he'd said that he grabbed the latest release and was playing around with it. So yeah, it just came out. But anyway, folks, before the connection drops out again, I just want to say thank you to everybody for joining tonight. I would have stayed on till 8:30, but honestly, at this point, I think it's gonna die right now. So if you don't hear this, I'm sorry. Thank you for joining, and I will do this again from a better location.